home people that were in a foreclosure situation or people that are now in a foreclosure situation. Can you address some of those scenarios?
Well, absolutely. The problem is that it legitimizes MERS. So if you have filed a complaint, you have lost your legal standing. If you were to file a complaint in the future, you would have no legal standing to do so. And those homes that won in court, the bank would then be able to go back in time and take you back to court and get your home back because MERS is legal. And that was the scariest part for me. That was the question that I had. I was talking with my friend Michelle when she brought this to me, and I said, well, will they be able to take the homes away from the people who already got them in court? And when I asked that question, my cell phone connection dropped. And I had to call my friend back, and we couldn't get through to each other. We tried 4 times. So finally I texted her and said, we'll talk about this later.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that if I'm losing cell phone connection and I don't live in a place where my cell phone is compromised, then they don't want me discussing this.
Right. You explained it really well. In another interview I heard, you called it the Jeopardy Clause, and you were talking about the difference between civil and criminal. Could you go over that? Because the way you explained it was very clear, and I think that would be good information to get out.
The Jeopardy Clause in criminal is, I'll use murder. If you are indicted for murder and you are acquitted or found not guilty, they can't then turn around and come back at you for murder. That's double jeopardy. They can't do that. So when they bring a murder case forward, they make sure that they have everything perfect because they don't want to lose the case. And civil has a version of the Jeopardy Clause that works much the same way as the criminal counterpart. In Jeopardy, which is the civil version, can terminate in 4 instances: during acquittal, after dismissal, after a mistrial, and on appeal after conviction. And so what this means is that the homeowner who previously won a lawsuit against the bank and kept their home would now be able to be under threat of the bank again to have the case reopened under new evidence arguments. And the new evidence would be the passing of PATH and the legalization of MERS. Bank of America could then come back and say, well, MERS has been legalized. And they can take your home away from you. If you won your home with the first case on acquittal, after dismissal, on a mistrial, or on appeal after conviction, and that has to do with the criminal version, but we're applying it to civil. So if your case was acquitted because the bank couldn't prove that they signed the documents through robo-signing, they can't prove that someone actually took their hand, took a pen, and took it to the paper. So they lose. You lose. The banks lose, and you win your home. And with PATH passing, they can then say, well, this system is legal. This system is federalized. And so I'm coming back and saying that the acquittal or the dismissal or the mistrial is now illegitimate based on new evidence being the passage of PATH. So they can come back and sue you again for your house. And after you've gone through one lawsuit and you're still paying off bills from that previous lawsuit, who can afford to go through another one?
Right. Let alone the first time.
Right. So in the second time, if you're financially strapped, chances are you're not going to be able to fight and you'll lose your home. And that's what they're banking on. Mm-hmm. No pun intended.
Suzanne, I've heard you even say that people don't even know if their home has been paid off. Can you talk more about that?
If your home was securitized through the MERS system, look on the top of your mortgage note, and there will be an 18-digit number. It will start with the letter M for MERS. And you will know that your mortgage was securitized.
Okay.
And if you need more information, there's a gentleman who wrote a book called Clouded Titles. I cannot remember his name. His name always escapes me, but the book is Clouded Titles. He has a website. Go look him up. He does radio shows, and he is available for communication through emails, and he can explain much better what to do once you see that you've got that 18-digit MERS number on the top of your mortgage note, and how to proceed.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and take our next break. Listeners, today my guest is Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com, and we'll be back momentarily on the Truth Seekers radio show.
If you're the kind of person that likes to drive a lot, and your car is a little older and out of the normal warranty, keep listening. What's going on underneath the hood of your car? If your car is out of warranty, you're at risk of expensive repair bills. Now, for a couple of dollars a day, you can get an extended protection plan for your car. You love your car, so why not give it a little extra care and make sure if something goes wrong, your bank account is safe. Literally, for a couple of dollars a day, you can give yourself peace of mind that you've purchased a top-tier vehicle repair coverage plan. Call the Auto Protection Network right now and ask how you could save an additional $500 on your policy.
800-979-9252. 800-979-9252. 800-979-9252. That's 800-979-9252.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Truth Seekers radio show. Today my guest is Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com, and we're discussing the mortgage fraud, foreclosures, and the link to Agenda 21. And Suzanne, could you give us any other contact information or I've been saying your website is OccupyCorporatism.com. Do you want to talk a little bit about the radio show or give any other contact info?
Well, my radio show is on a hiatus. I just moved into a new house, so I had to put my show on hold. But you can listen to the archives on American Freedom Radio. Just look under show hosts or put in the Region 10 report in their search, and you'll be able to listen to the old shows. I do a lot of other interviews, so you can catch me anywhere. I'm on Lori's Talk News Radio on Sundays, 7 to 9 Pacific Time. And I just kind of show up anywhere. But that's...
Well, I've heard you talk about, in the article you were talking about the JEB Fund. What is that exactly?
The JEB Fund is Jeb Henserling's kind of like, it's a super PAC. So people will give campaign contributions to him through this super PAC, and it's the Jobs, Economy, and Budget Fund because this is his platform. And so he takes money from all the people that I mentioned. They all contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars, which, if you add it all up, comes out to multi-million dollars that they put into his fund. But the PATH bill has implications in retail and also in energy. And MasterCard, those Cash America International and CheckSmart Financial that were there, let's say that you had a JCPenney card. I don't know if anybody still does, but let's say you do. And you charged off $300 or $400 a couple of years ago. Well, MasterCard or JCPenney's or whoever it is can come back after you and say, well, I'd like that $300 back.
Okay, but God forbid you had tens of thousands
which most people do,
Yeah,
charge
they
everything.
did.
You got to have a good credit score. If you don't have a good credit score, you can't even get a job. Actually, they're checking your credit score too.
Wow.
So yeah, they say that if you don't pay your bills, you're not responsible and you wouldn't show up to work.
It's like, well, why would I need a job if I had loads of money?
Exactly. Well, yeah, when you go to get a loan, you have to have exorbitant amounts of collateral.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't need the loan if you have
Right.
all this stuff.
So let's tie this whole thing up back to the land grab in your Agenda 21, because you had some good info on that. So this all goes back to just one big land grab, correct?
Yes. Ben Bernanke calls it QE3.
Mm-hmm.
QE infinity. And he just said that he's going to continue to do the QE. And what that is they're buying the mortgage-backed securities at $85 billion a month. They're buying the mortgage notes. The Federal Reserve is the biggest landowner in the United States right now because they are holding all of those notes that were securitized, and they are continuing to accumulate more and more notes as they pay out to the banks. Yes, it's a bailout to the banks, but even bigger, it's a land grab. Now, for your listeners, will probably remember that in the 70s, a professor put together a map of the United States indicating areas where non-human use, little tiny black dots on either coast where the megacities will be located, and how would they be able to acquire the majority of the continental United States? Through the mortgage-backed securities debacle, through the housing bubble that they created. With the Federal Reserve acquiring all of those mortgage notes, every single note that they have in their hands is another piece of property that they own. And I want people to understand it's not just your neighbor down the street who's being foreclosed on. Every single piece of property in the United States at some point had a mortgage. If you're renting a house from somebody, or if you're renting an apartment from a company, if they don't pay their bills, guess what? Everybody goes out.
And that was happening a lot. I knew people that were renting places, and come to find out, the landlord wasn't even making the mortgage payments, and it was a surprise to the renter. So that was happening.
Yes, and it's happening a lot. It's also the farms. It's any piece of property. A lot of people get stuck on homeowners, and that is directed information because they want you to think that the mortgages are just for homeowners. No, it's for everybody. If you own a piece of property and you have a business on it, and the bank forecloses on the property, your business has to move. Where are you going to go if you don't have any other place to go? So you have to close down your business.
I think you just wrote a recent article where you talk about something called Living Cities Project, and when I was reading that, I think it was you were talking about how victims of foreclosure could easily be entered into this pipeline for something that they were calling the Living Cities Project. And that just seemed to dovetail so perfectly with this foreclosure situation. Do you think there's a deliberate connection there?
Yeah, the article is 6 things you need to know about the bankster takeover. And that was part of another article that I'd written. And I was looking at what's going on with the banking and reading a lot of articles that are coming out that my peers are writing. I want people to understand the end game is Agenda 21. That's what they want. And so Living Cities is this great little idea that a bunch of banks came up with. J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, the Ford Foundation, AARP, Bank of America, Citigroup, and the Rockefeller Foundation. And so Living Cities is a privately funded group that is going to help all of these families who are displaced by foreclosures. That sounds great. It's wonderful. Give them some place to live. Let's see what's available. Oh, it's all of these Agenda 21 shoe boxes, like in New York. They just built 275 to 300 square foot apartments. San Francisco built 150 square foot apartments. Boston built 450 square foot apartments. Oregon just erected the 267 to 385 square foot apartments. Is it going to be cheaper to live in a shoebox? No. We're talking about $850 to $1,500 a month.
Oh my gosh.
To live in a cell, to live in a 4x10.
Right.
And the Daily Mail put out an article showing these huge 25, 30, 40-story high-rises in the lower income areas in Beijing. And they took aerial shots of the people inside their little cell that's as big as your bathroom. If you have what my husband likes to call a one-booty bathroom. And the aerial shots tell it all. These people have shelving all up on the walls. They only have room for a bed. They're eating on their bed. They've got a little makeshift stove that you would take to like a camping trip, and that's their stove.
That's not living. I'm sorry. That's not living.
Well, what these people say for the shoeboxes is, come on, you're doing all your living outside your house. You're working outside your house. You're socializing outside of your house. You just need a place to sleep. You don't need all that room.
Yeah. Well, in your opinion, so if somebody does have a paid-off mortgage and they say, well, Suzanne, I know I'm safe because I own my home, what do you say to them if we're looking into the future with where all this stuff is going? Are they really safe?
Check and see if you've got that 18-digit number that starts with the letter M. If you do, you're not safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I talked to my friend Michelle, I asked her, how many homes have been foreclosed on? I mean, can I say that 1/3 of the property in the United States has been foreclosed on? And she says, we have no idea. Those who are working in the foreclosures industry, keeping people in their homes, activists who are working with the lawyers who are man enough to actually go up against the banks and win these cases, they have no clue how deep this goes. The assumption is every single piece of property will eventually turn up in this mortgage-backed securities debacle. It is simply a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that to scare people. I say that so that people can be vigilant and look up things now. You don't want to have the sheriff come knocking on your door because you thought that you were paying off your mortgage. You thought you were paying on the principal, but you never got to the principal because you've been paying all of these bank fees and all these late fees because they've been holding your paperwork. Because when you go to remodify your home, they hold the paperwork for 2 or 3 months, and then an hour before midnight when they're supposed to have been already filed, they go ahead and file it and say, oops, we lost it, but we found it and we filed it an hour before it was due, and oh, your modification did not get approved. And by the way, people pay for that modification. There are, and people have to be wary. The modification process is a scam. And there are people in the foreclosures circles who have picked up on this, and they work with Bank of America. And be very wary of people in the foreclosure circles telling you remodify and everything will be fine. It'll cost you $2,000 or $3,000, but it'll save you in fees and attorney's fees and court costs down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. Don't do it. As scary as it is, find an attorney. Like I said, Staffney Law Firm in Washington State, and they network with people all across the country. It might be that they can advise you with an attorney somewhere in your area.
Right.
But don't take the modification. Those people are working with the banks. They get a kickback. You pay $3,000 for that modification that doesn't go through, and that guy who told you to go ahead and refi or modify your mortgage got 15% for signing fee. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he's making money off of you losing money and going to court anyway and losing your house.
Unbelievable.
It is. It's unbelievable. The people who claim to be helping are helping the banks hurt us. And with everything that's going on, people really need to look into where they're getting their information, who they're talking to, and make sure that it is a credible source. The thing that I do with my journalism needs to be done across the board for everyone listening to this show, and anyone who pays attention to alternative media in general. There is too much disinformation. There's not enough people who are sourcing documents so people can read the actual document and not just another article that mentioned that document.
Right.
And I try really hard to get those actual documents so people can read them and get the information that is actually going to help them, instead of just directing them to a CNN article that mentioned it, and then you have to copy and paste a title and look for it. And by the way, if you ever want to find, this is just a little hint for people who do research, for your listening audience, anytime I want to find an actual document, I find the title of the document and put PDF at the end of the search. And 9 times out of 10, I find the actual document.
That's a good idea. Okay. All right, listeners, today our guest is Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com, and we will be back on the Truth Seekers radio show momentarily.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No, no one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. That's 800-393-5045.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Truth Seekers radio show. Today our guest is Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com. And we're discussing mortgage fraud, foreclosures, and the link to Agenda 21. So, Suzanne, why do you think maybe the mainstream media, I haven't heard much of them talking about this much at all. Why aren't they touching this story? I think it's pretty important.
Because the CIA controls the mainstream media.
Okay.
That's it in a nutshell. You might hear something here and there.
Yeah.
When I look for news to write what's going on, I always look for something that nobody else is talking about, or some piece of information that came up in a search and then disappears the next day. I want to capture that, because that is the information that people need to hear about. Because they'll mention it, because then they say, well, we did. Mm-hmm. CNN will say, we did. We wrote this one article that was out for like 10 minutes, and then we pulled it back. But we did. We covered it.
Yeah. Do you believe that it's the end of property rights as the American people know them?
Well, we never had property rights.
Mm-hmm.
If you pay property tax, you never owned your property. If you have to ask the city for permission to dig a well, you never owned your property to begin with.
It's getting ridiculous, too, as time goes on.
You can't have a watershed. There are cities that have ordinances that say the rain clouds, and the rain comes down over our city, and we own that. So if you collect that rainwater, you're going to be arrested, because you're taking money out of the city's hands.
So
so they own the clouds.
Yeah. So what can the average guy do? It gets so frustrating and so overwhelming, and I can see where people, they just get so blinded with so much information, they don't even know where to start, even if they're in a situation like this.
My answer to that always, and I've looked at this every which way, and it's not a popular opinion, because the alternative media is basically moving the audience toward a specific response to everything that's going on around us. My opinion is stop complying with the system. The system is based on your compliance. It's been set up that way. It's been set up to victimize and create slaves. The slave mentality is rife in our social consciousness, and we police ourselves. And, you know, they do have the little see something, say something campaign everywhere you go. But and on the city buses, and when I take the ferry onto the mainland where I live, it says, you know, if you see something, say something. If you see a bag unattended, that could be a bomb. Oh, my God. Stop complying with the system. If you don't like what's happening to you, if you don't appreciate the ethics of the corporation, don't buy from them. If you don't appreciate the ethics of the banking industry, close your bank account. You can survive without a bank account. I've done it for nearly a decade now, and I don't have a problem paying my bills.
You know, in speaking, you mentioned credit unions earlier. So what about people that say, well, I'm part of a credit union, so I think I'm okay. What would you, because you said you wrote an article regarding that.
Yes, I got an article coming out tomorrow
on
OccupyCorporatism.com about the National Credit Agency, NCAU, I'm sorry. They are suing the banksters over the mortgage-backed securities fraud. And this is a federal organization that is much like the FDIC, which means that all of your credit unions, all of your independent, quote-unquote, independent credit unions that just pop up, and they're democratically run because it's a credit union, so everyone has a voice. They are backed by the federal government. They are insured by the federal government, which means that at the end of the day, the bank is going to go with the federal government over your opinion or your vote in the credit union. And people need to understand that. Credit unions are not as independent as they appear to be because they are federally funded and backed by the federal government. So, my opinion, no bank is a good choice. No bank is a good bank.
And what about, have you heard, now this I never heard in the mainstream, have you heard that China actually owns, like, I think it's in Toledo, Ohio, like they own a piece of that city, and also in Idaho, it's like these little Chinese enclaves that are owned by China, and they're Chinese citizens actually working there, and it's ruled by China. Have you heard that?
No, I haven't, but China has been given special privileges through the Obama administration. They are given first right of auction through the U.S. Treasury on property here in the United States, especially those homes that were seized and are on auction through the foreclosures. So they are purchasing an exorbitant amount of the foreclosed homes, foreclosed buildings, foreclosed businesses, foreclosed properties. They're just eating it up. And with first right on the there is a it's kind of like a secret market before it goes on to the open to everybody from the U.S. Treasury. Obama gave the Chinese government their own password into the computer system so they can see as it comes up, as these homes get put on. It's kind of like an MLS system.
Oh my gosh!
So they get to see what's coming up before it's officially on the market for auction, and then go ahead and put a bid on it before anybody else does.
Isn't it unbelievable how all this stuff goes on and we don't even know about most of it? It's just really scary.
It is.
But, the sad thing is I think a lot of people don't want to know about it. Because when I talk to people about just the few little things I hear in the alternative media, they think I'm out of my mind.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. My friends and family who are not awake, they think that what I do it's like a career and that I'm like successful, Like, ooh, my daughter is a radio host. No. Did you hear my show? Did you listen? Did you read the article?
But it's like, it's either that or they say you're being negative. You're a doomsday person. You're just being negative.
Well, that's the social conditioning, folks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the policing. Oh, yeah, don't be a negative Nancy, I get people sending me emails all the time. Why don't you write about something positive? To me, this is positive. To me, knowing what's happening to you instead of walking around going, why does this world stink the way that it does? I wanted to use another word, but I won't. But, why is life so hard?
Uh-huh.
Why is it so terrible? Why do people leave? Why do people get divorced so much? Why do I don't know anybody from high school that I was such good friends with, and why do people move away from their families? This is all social conditioning. This is isolationism. This is getting you away from your comfort base and your support base so that you can be more easily victimized. Mm-hmm. And we think that it's normal. It used to be normal that when your parents got older, they moved in with you and you took care of them until they died. Now you just send them to a home and let somebody abuse them, and you pay them money for that.
Right.
And then you wonder why Grandma is so depressed every time you go to see her. Because she shouldn't be living out the last few years of her life away from her children, away from her grandchildren, the things that give her life meaning. She spent all of her life working hard to take care of you, and you stick her in a home because you don't want to be bothered.
Yeah, exactly. She's an inconvenience.
Yes.
It's sad.
We do that to each other. We do that to our kids. How many times do we sit down and talk to our kids? Like really talk to our kids and find out how they feel and what they think about what they're learning in the indoctrination stations.
Or sending your 6-week-old baby to a nursery school. That one I can't understand.
I made the decision when my son was born. I have a son and a daughter now.
Mm-hmm.
My son was born. I just started teaching him things and more different languages, learning how to read and write. When it came time for him to go to school, I went and looked at the different schools where I could send him and the curriculum,
mm-hmm.
and I realized that he knew more than his counterparts would going into first grade.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said, I'm not going to do this to him. I'm not going to dumb him down or put him in a situation where he isn't challenged and be told by the indoctrination stations that my son needs to be on a mood stabilizer in order to continue to go to school,
mm-hmm.
which a lot of parents are being told. So I homeschool both of my children. My daughter is about 3, and she sits at the table with me and my son while he's learning, and she's learning just alongside us,
Good for you. Okay, well, Suzanne, we're running out of time, so any final thoughts on the PATH bill that you might want to leave the listeners with?
Go to the article. The article's entitled "New House Bill Wipes Mortgage Fraud Clean for Banksters" on my website, OccupyCorporatism.com, and please click on the links and contact Jeb Henserling and all of the people on the House Financial Services Committee, whether or not you are their constituents, and tell them exactly what you think about them legitimizing an illegal system that will allow the banks to keep those homes, take those homes, and even take them from the people who have already won them in court.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks, Suzanne. Thanks so much for your time and this important information. Listeners, today my guest has been Suzanne Posel, Chief Editor and Investigative Journalist of OccupyCorporatism.com. And thanks until next week when we meet again. God bless. 245 years, the American people have enjoyed a certain amount of civility and prosperity in a free society. How did such a strong and leading country go from a prosperous nation with a moral people to such a declining and morally bankrupt nation that promotes depravity and death? Hi, I'm Angeline Marie, host of the Truth Seekers radio show. I've been hosting this show for over 10 years. Now the Lord has put it on my heart to write a book about all I've learned on how we became a soulless society. I'm getting ready to send my book to the editor, but before it's even published, I like to share a couple of the chapters with you, my listeners, for free. All you have to do is visit my website. Go to truthseekersradioshow.com. That's truthseekersradioshow.com, and download the first 2 chapters of my soon-to-be published book about how we became a soulless society and now what we can do to be the light in a time of darkness.
This is the K-Star Talk Radio Network.
Kingdom Star Radio Network. Listen 24/7 to Christian biblical teaching and talk radio online at KingdomStarRadio.com. Or download the simple radio app from the Kingdom Star Radio website to listen on your Apple or Android phone or device. Visit KingdomStarRadio.com and listen to the best in Christian teaching and talk today. That's KingdomStarRadio.com.
Over 245 years, the American people have enjoyed a certain amount of civility and prosperity in a free society. How did such a strong and leading country go from a prosperous nation with a moral people to such a declining and morally bankrupt nation that promotes depravity and death? Hi, I'm Angeline Marie, host of the Truth Seekers radio show. I've been hosting this show for over 10 years. Now the Lord has put it on my heart to write a book about all I've learned on how we became a soulless society. I'm getting ready to send my book to the editor, but before it's even published, I like to share a couple of the chapters with you, my listeners, for free. All you have to do is visit my website. Go to truthseekersradioshow.com. That's truthseekersradioshow.com, and download the first 2 chapters of my soon-to-be published book about how we became a soulless society and now what we can do to be the light in a time of darkness. Riverside, San Bernardino, Inland Empire, and listeners around the world. Welcome to the Truth Seekers radio show. I'm your host, Angeline Marie. Thanks for taking the time to join us this morning. We're broadcasting from our flagship station, KCAA 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind. If you're located in the Southern California Inland Empire, you'll find us on KCAA 1050 on the AM dial. But if not, you can find us streaming on kcaaradio.com or talkstreamlive.com. You can also hear our program rebroadcast on Liberty Works Radio Network at libertyworksradionetwork.com or on Red State Talk Radio at redstatetalkradio.com. And you can check their websites for broadcast days and times. Also, you can find podcasts posted on kcaaradio.com to listen at your leisure, and you can learn more about our show at truthseekersradioshow.com. Today, my guest is Linda Christina Beauregard. She's the author of a book titled, I Gave Myself Cancer, I Can Take It Away. Alternatives Brought Me Back to Life. And we're going to discuss her journey after she was diagnosed with breast cancer. But first, I'd like to give this health disclaimer that the information and products discussed today are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and that the information and product statements made have not been evaluated by the FDA. Please seek advice from a licensed medical physician before using any product or therapy. Linda faced her breast cancer diagnosis head-on with simple, natural alternatives rather than using surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation. She decided to go outside the norm of traditional treatments and embark upon a journey that changed her life. She hopes her story will encourage and inspire others to investigate alternative options before making a final choice of treatments if diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. Linda now enjoys speaking and teaching the importance of eating a plant-based diet, avoiding a toxic lifestyle, and teaches people how they can fend off and overcome disease using alternatives. She's also been a guest speaker at many women's clubs and health clubs, and has been a guest lecturer for Princess Cruises. Her story has appeared in various newspaper articles, journals, and also on various television and radio outlets, and she claims that now she is healthier than she's ever been in her life. Good morning, Linda. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Angeline. I'm just great, thank you.
Listen, thanks so much for taking your time this morning to talk to us about your book and your story. I know you have a lot of very important information that needs to get out there. So, Linda, before we get started, I just wondered if we could start at the beginning with your personal story. About when were you diagnosed with breast cancer, and what led you to the point of writing your book?
Well, up until I was about 50 years old, I was leading a regular standard American diet in terms of my eating and taking in all kinds of animal protein as well as a lot of fats and things that I thought were healthy for us based on the food pyramid at the time. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2005. And at that point, I was very discouraged. My mother died from lung cancer at 57, and here I was just 7 years younger than she was. And I saw her go through traditional chemotherapy and radiation, and she did not bode very well. She died at 57 from it. So I knew very well the complications and the problems that traditional medicine brought to someone who was facing such a challenge. So I decided that after my diagnosis that I wanted to look into a little further the alternatives, and a friend of mine gave me a book. I became so impressed with the ease of which most disease can be treated that I thought this story has got to get out there. There has to be more people sharing this kind of information so that we can stay away from chemotherapy and radiation and further drugs and other kinds of toxic and invasive procedures that the medical community uses primarily for treatment of disease and illness.
Now, what was like the length of time that it took to actually treat yourself to where you started to heal from breast cancer?
Well, healing starts immediately when you start to give your body the tools that it needs, primarily, raw foods and juices and, produce that has vitamins and minerals and nutrients in it that your body can recognize. So the program that I was under used that kind of protocol primarily along with vitamin and mineral supplements to help improve my immune system, which was seriously deficient. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten cancer to begin with. The effects of the program started immediately. You start feeling wonderful just within a few days, and then when you continue to use the program to overcome whatever ailment it is you're fighting or whatever disease, it becomes a lifelong commitment because you just feel great. So things start to get better right away.
Now, I believe in your book, you talk about how you went to a natural alternative sort of clinic. Could you tell us the story about that?
Yes. A friend of mine gave me a book called The Cancer Battle Plan, which was written by David and Ann Fram, and it was a story about Ann's stage 4 recovery from breast cancer using the same programs that I use. And they became, so enthralled with the program that Ann was on. She was near death. I mean, she was sent home to die after being given multiple blood transfusions and all kinds of chemotherapy and radiation and bone marrow transplants. The doctor sent her home to die, and they refused to give up, and they sought out a nutritionist who put them on this program. Well, she recovered, and they decided to start a facility they called Health Quarters Ministries, which administered the same program that Ann used to other people who were fighting disease and illness, not just cancer. So that is the program that I took. I went out to Colorado Springs, where Health Quarters Ministries is located, and did what they called an 8-day lodge program, where I started juicing, using fresh raw fruits and vegetable juices, and using supplements, vitamin and mineral supplements, to help rebuild my immune system. I also was doing some detoxification procedures using coffee and water enemas, liver gallbladder flushes, parasite cleanses, and things of that nature. And in just 1 week's time, the improvement in my overall health was simply amazing. But in addition to that, the information that I gathered there about all the things that I was doing that were wrong about my diet that I thought were healthy continued to give me cause for alarm and to change the way I ate going forward, because you can't just get healthy and say, okay, I can go back to the way I ate, because you're just going to continue to experience the same program or the same problems that you had before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the program I took.
Now, when you were diagnosed, what stage had they diagnosed you at?
Well, I didn't really give them an opportunity to completely stage me, because the tumor that they took out and biopsied was considered a stage 1. It was about the size of a dime. And they wanted to go back in and do a second surgery to remove more tissue, to get some lymph nodes, which they did not take initially, to identify those under a microscope and see if there was further cancer there. If the lymph nodes were cancerous and more tissue sample from my breast was cancerous as well, then they would have considered me at least a stage 2. So I was at least stage 1, but I didn't give them the opportunity to go back and do that second surgery, because by then I had done an enormous amount of research and decided to use alternatives exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
After I had gotten my lab report from the tissue samples that were taken, they didn't get clean margins, and I drew these tissue samples out on a piece of paper in a 3-dimensional form. And although I was taking the most, the longest, the widest, and the deepest portion, I said, oh, my God, there's all this tissue that's been removed from my breast. How could they possibly take any more and I have any breast left?
Mm-hmm.
So I developed a whole long list of questions for my surgeon at the time, and I went in there and I said, how is it that you could inject dye through my nipple now that you've already taken 2 large tissue samples away from my breast, and have that dye travel in the same direction as it would have if you had injected the dye initially before the tissue was removed? And she looked at me and said, well, Linda, that's a very good question. And I thought, there's no way I'm going forward with this second surgery, because the surgeon can't answer what to me seemed like a very simple question. So at that point, I really turned away from traditional medicine. I canceled the second surgery, and my oncologist and my doctor, the surgeon, called me up once I had decided I was going to cancel the surgery and said, oh, don't you know that, this could be dangerous, inflicting all kinds of fear into me, as though they had the answer for everything and that I had to do this in order to save myself. And I said, I had learned enough about alternative medicine at that point and realized the power that we have as individuals if we take responsibility for our health and start to feed our body the things that it really needs in order to help heal it, to rebuild our immune system. And my oncologist, when I spoke to him, he made the comment, oh, well, that's all I know. And I wasn't in his presence at the time,
mm-hmm.
but yet I could almost see through the telephone I could almost visualize what it was he was feeling, and it looked like it felt to me like he was feeling frustration.
Right.
Because he knew, he might have actually known that the chemotherapy and the radiation and the things he was administering really might not be helping many people. And the second thing is I had done so much research about the differences between alternative and traditional treatments that I had just got frustrated. And one night, I had a lot of sleepless nights, and one night I was up watching television, and Kevin Trudeau was on, who was the author of a book, Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About. And then having gone back to bed that night after listening to his story, I was still undecided, and I was thinking about this major decision, and before me, I was wide awake praying for some kind of an answer or guide from, God to give me an answer. And then I was thinking about my mother having gone through chemotherapy and radiation, and seeing what she went through, the sickening side effects, the vomiting, the being tired all the time, losing her hair. And she was a beautician, and for that to have happened to her was very traumatic, and for me to witness. Mm-hmm. So I was praying for an answer, and then while I was thinking about all this chemotherapy and toxic treatments and negative side effects, I got this smiley face in my mind's eye, only it wasn't a smile, it was a frown. And it was at that moment that I felt divinely inspired that God was actually trying to give me some direction, and the direction was not to take the chemotherapy and the radiation. By virtue of this frowning smiley face, after all the research I had done, it was like, the last piece to the puzzle. It's what I needed in order to make that final decision. And I woke up that following morning with a renewed sense of purpose and determination, and started to research places where I could go to get some information about how I could treat my cancer.
Okay, Linda, we're going to take a break. Listeners, today my guest is Linda Christina Beauregard, author of I Gave Myself Cancer. I Can Take It Away. We'll be back momentarily.
Post-COVID travel is on a surge. Many of you are traveling for fun because you've been locked up for 2 years. Listen, whether you're traveling for fun to Italy, Greece, Spain, France, or somewhere else fun in the world, or USA, now is a great time to book before the crowds hit and save. Plus, with a strong U.S. dollar, you'll get more travel bang for your buck. Right now is a smart time to make your reservations and call low-cost airlines. With one phone call, you can let us do all the work for free. We'll shop hundreds of airlines, hotels, resorts, and give you a way to save huge money on your vacation plans. And if you call right now, we'll give you a free hotel room with a qualified travel purchase. So call right now.
800-338-3814. 800-338-3814. 800-338-3814. That's 800-338-3814. Has your heater or air conditioner busted? Appliance broken? Computer crashed? Then you need an ARW home warranty. Home system and appliance repairs and replacements can cause stress and cost you thousands of dollars per year. With an A-plus BBB rating and a top-rated home warranty company on Consumer Affairs and Trustpilot, ARW Home provides superior service, featuring the industry's lowest service call fee. ARW Home has warranty plans that cover your kitchen and laundry appliances, heating and air conditioning systems, electrical and plumbing systems, and much more. Call 800-943-4214 to customize your plan. Plus, ARW has partnered with Azurian to protect your new and used tablets, laptops, TVs, and other home tech from accidental damage and wear and tear. All plans come with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 800-943-4214 for a free quote. That's 800-943-4214.
Welcome back back. You're listening to the Truth Seekers radio show. Today our guest is Linda Christina Beauregard, author of I Gave Myself Cancer, I Can Take It Away. Linda, in your book you talk about getting a political education, and you talk about seeing a relationship between government, big pharma, and the healthcare system, and possibly how they're for-profit, trying to keep these alternatives under wraps. I mean, it seems as though cancer is big business. Can you tell us more about when you got that revelation?
Sure. It happened during my research and all the reading that I had done. Again, Kevin Trudeau's Natural Cures, they don't want you to know about, was very instrumental in bringing to the forefront a lot of things about how our health is handled by various government organizations. And I also read a book by G. Edward Griffin called The World Without Cancer, which talked about vitamin B17, which is also known as Laetrile, which comes from the seeds of apples and apricot pits and so forth, and how back in the 1940s and so forth, in the, I think, the early 50s, people were being cured by using those, just that one single vitamin. And you don't see that happening. And I started to look even more deeply into all of this and really got discouraged. And then I discovered all the lobbying efforts that were being put out there to protect the interests of the food manufacturers and the pharmaceutical industry, to protect, they're creating, more and more drugs. And then the more drugs they produced, the more they had to sell them in order to pay back the investment in their research, which can take, thousands, if not sometimes millions of dollars. So they have to get their money back from someplace. And then, just recently there was information put out in 1946, the Department of Defense had asked a couple of doctors, Goodman and Gilman, to find a medical use for mustard gas. And so they discovered that in rats in laboratory testing, they could reduce the size of tumors using mustard gas. And then they tried it on a single lymphoma patient, which did reduce the tumors, but unfortunately a few months later, this gentleman actually did die. But the pharmaceutical industry saw this as a panacea for, marketing a chemical that, could ultimately be used to treat cancer. And, that is just, it's just wrong because it doesn't happen. I mean, chemotherapy is a toxic drug, and it is not successful most of the time. In fact, the oncologists that you ask if they were to treat their own family with, chemotherapy and radiation, would they do it? I think the percentage was somewhere around 70 or 80% of them said no, they won't. Mm-hmm. But the research that I had done into the amount of lobbying money that is spent to keep the pharmaceutical industry alive was just staggering. And when you think of the amount of money that could actually be put into making people well by teaching them how to eat and not to eat, processed foods and white flour, and to stay away from excessive amounts of, smoking and alcohol and soda and, artificial hormone therapies and all kinds of things that could actually make you sick and sicker. Food is too simple a solution. So, they have to find a way to supplement and to, pay back their research.
Right.
So it was just an awesome awakening, which was one of the other reasons why I chose to write this book and get the story out there. People need to know there's power in plants.
During your research, what did you find out about mammograms? I mean, I've heard that women that have these done regularly, that it could actually help to bring on breast cancer. What do you feel about that?
Sure. I mean, it's radiation exposure, and depending on each person's own sensitivity level to radiation will, depend on whether or not you can actually, develop a cancerous tumor because of it, or, your body can take care of it depending on just how healthy you are. when radiation was first discovered, it was great. I forget the name of the woman who did or the doctor, but you saw the hand. There was a vivid picture of a hand, and you could see through the bones and whatnot. And so then they started to administer large doses of radiation, and then all of a sudden you would discover that several years later, these things were actually, some research indicated that these were the actual causes of other cancers. So the radiation dosage that was being administered got less and less and less the more sophisticated equipment became. But, yeah, I haven't had a mammogram since I was diagnosed, and I don't intend to have any.
Right. You talk about what you describe as 6 nutritional deficiencies. One is low thyroid function, and you think this is linked to breast cancer. Could you talk about the low thyroid function?
Well, it wasn't so much that what I thought. It was the information that was given to me when I went to Colorado Springs with Dr. David Fram, who went on to become a naturopathic doctor. And he discovered that through muscle response testing, also known as kinesiology and biofeedback testing, that low thyroid function, congested liver, sluggish colon, unbalanced estrogen, the depletion of zinc and depletion of essential fatty acids in the body typically contribute to the cause of breast cancer. So all of these things are affected, in a domino type of effect right on down the road, so that when your thyroid isn't functioning, it's going to affect how your liver functions. When your liver is congested, it's going to affect how your colon is digesting food and passing toxic waste through your body. That contributes to unbalanced estrogen, because if your colon is clogged up, it's like a filter in your house or in your water systems. Things don't process smoothly. So then that leads to the depletion of zinc, and then that can lead to the depletion of essential fatty acids, which are necessary in order to help heal your cells for people who are experiencing, disease and illness. So, specifically, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I don't know how all of these things interrelate from a medical perspective, but from what I learned and from from the experience I had and how I recovered and how healthy I am now, it certainly sounds like the thyroid is a very important organ in your body, and when it doesn't function, a whole host of other things can, fall out of balance.
Linda, what are you doing today? I mean, it seems like it's getting more difficult to find foods that don't, you can't even trust fruits and vegetables in the grocery store. It just seems like it's getting more difficult with the pesticides and the GMOs that they don't even tell us that they're putting in this stuff or growing it. What are you doing to, get to ensure that you're getting really good food? I mean, what would you tell somebody as far as that goes?
Well, the first thing is to buy organic and locally grown organic, if at all possible. And organic foods are grown not using chemical fertilizers or pesticides or fungicides or, anything that's chemically made to try to combat, organisms that could, affect a farmer's field. So I buy predominantly at this point. Initially, when I was first diagnosed and going through the program, you couldn't find a non-organic thing anywhere in my refrigerator, and that included some of the condiments that I continued to use for, making salads and things like that. Everything was organic, and you need to do that when you're recovering from a disease or an illness. But to start with your local farms, and especially if they're organic, because that is going to contribute to rebuilding your immune system faster than anything else will. And I agree with you. We are left in the lurch sometimes with companies that are producing, organisms and foods that they think are going to help heal world hunger, when in fact it's just going to contribute to more disease and illness down the road, like GMOs and the fact that they're not labeled, and there's a big effort on now to try to get that to happen. Especially there was one in California, and although that bill wasn't passed, it created an enormous amount of awareness on the part of people all over the United States and the world in terms of the genetically modified problems that come up with illness. But for people just starting out, absolutely. And, I hear stories all the time about the cost of organic foods, costing a little bit more. And, but what's that worth in terms of the overall health of your body? Because if you don't have a healthy body, you're going to spend time away from work, you're going to spend time at the doctor's, you're going to have co-pays, you have health insurance, you have a whole host of issues that come up where that could certainly not be the case if you were choosing to eat a healthier diet and using organic fruits and vegetables and giving your body what it needs so you would never have to make those trips to the doctor, the time away from work, the transportation and the fuel and the cost of your vehicle to get to and from these places. So for people just starting out, eat as much organic produce as possible, especially green leafy vegetables, which is where you get an enormous amount of, micronutrients and macronutrients that you just don't get in processed food.
Right. Okay, Linda, we're going to take our next break. Listeners, today my guest is Linda Christina Beauregard, author of I Gave Myself Cancer, I Can Take It Away. We'll be back momentarily on the Truth Seekers radio show.
Has your heater or air conditioner busted? Appliance broken? Computer crashed? Then you need an ARW home warranty. Home system and appliance repairs and replacements can cause stress and cost you thousands of dollars per year. With an A-plus BBB rating and a top-rated home warranty company on Consumer Affairs and Trustpilot, ARW Home provides superior service, featuring the industry's lowest service call fee. ARW Home has warranty plans that cover your kitchen and laundry appliances, heating and air conditioning systems, electrical and plumbing systems, and much more. Call 800-943-4214 to customize your plan. Plus, ARW has partnered with Azurian to protect your new and used tablets, laptops, TVs, and other home tech from accidental damage and wear and tear. All plans come with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 800-943-4214 for a free quote. That's 800-943-4214.
If you're the kind of person that likes to drive a lot and your car is a little older and out of the normal warranty, keep listening. What's going on underneath the hood of your car? If your car is out of warranty, you're at risk of expensive repair bills. Now, for a couple of dollars a day, you can get an extended protection plan for your car. You love your car, so why not give it a little extra care and make sure if something goes wrong, your bank account is safe. Literally, for a couple of dollars a day, you can give yourself peace of mind that you've purchased a top-tier vehicle repair coverage plan. Call the Auto Protection Network right now and ask how you could save an additional $500 on your policy.
800-979-9252. 800-979-9252. 800-979-9252. That's 800-979-9252.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Truth Seekers radio show. Today our guest is Linda Christina Beauregard, author of I Gave Myself Cancer, I Can Take It Away. Linda, would you like to give out your web address and let the listeners know where they can find your book?
Sure, absolutely. It's available at curediseasenow.com. It's also available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and the BalboaPress.com website.
Okay. And, you were talking about foods in the last segment. Now, what about people that say, well, I don't feel like I can get enough protein unless I eat animal protein? What would you tell someone who says something like that?
There is actually more protein in a serving of broccoli for the same size serving as a piece of chicken. There is an enormous amount of usable protein in green vegetables, all kinds of green leafy vegetables primarily. You know, kale, chard, arugula, cilantro. There's just an enormous amount of good usable protein. But, you know, again, there's more money to be made by selling meat products, I guess, by the farmers who are, farming large cattle farms. And so we don't hear about the amount of protein that's available through regular produce. Also, just to go back one step, if I can, organic versus non-organic produce.
Right.
Organic foods have about 30 to 55% more vitamins and minerals in them than non-organic. So when you compare that to the non-organic version of conventional produce, you're getting 30 to 55% more nutrition. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, that's important. I mean, it's amazing because I don't think that's just common knowledge.
No.
They certainly don't want to get that information out there. Anyway, what about water? I mean, I think water plays a big role in health. Wouldn't you agree? And what about fluoride in the water and it's linked to disease? It's funny. Well, not funny, but the other day I was in the grocery store and I noticed this huge gallon of water called nursery water. And it was this big jug with a picture of a cute little baby on it, and it said, contains extra fluoride, as though it was going to be a benefit for the baby. And it said how you could use it to add to their formula and whatever else you're giving them to drink. But, you know, they've been selling us for years that we need fluoride to keep from getting cavities. What's your feeling on fluoride? And as far as water, what kind of water sources do you use?
Fluoride is a poison. Fluoride's origination was from the chemical fertilizer manufacturing companies and the manufacturing of aluminum for glass. And it is basically a toxic waste byproduct that is scraped from the smokestacks of these manufacturing companies. And years ago, it used to have to be disposed of by paying toxic waste carriers up to $1.40 a gallon, and this is going back, decades. And I'm not quite sure what the evolution of the use of it in the fluoride in our water supply now was, but now these same companies get paid, 35 cents a gallon for it so that these municipalities can then put it into their water supply. It's a toxic waste byproduct. It doesn't belong in our food, in our water, or especially with babies. I mean, that's just passing over the blood-brain barrier and affecting cells in our developing babies' brains, and this is just not right. It's just absolutely wrong. And fluoride is so toxic that countries in Europe have banned it. What is wrong with us? Why are we in the United States allowing this toxic chemical byproduct from these manufacturing industries to be put in our water supply? This just really gets the hair up on the back of my neck.
Right.
It just doesn't belong there. There is no proof anywhere, and you're going to have differing, alternatives versus the American Dental Association, depending on who you're going to be listening to. But do you want to use toxic poisons in your body?
Right.
That's basically the question. And if your municipal water supply contains fluoride, I would seriously consider getting a high-quality water filtration system, whether it's a reverse osmosis or some other whole house system that you could use to take the fluoride out before you drink it. Reverse osmosis is one of the more generally accepted ones. There are others. You can put back some minerals if you want to back into the water. You can use distilled water. You can use spring water. But most people don't drink enough water to begin with, where you should be drinking at least one half of your body weight in ounces every day in order to keep your cells hydrated and your body flushed from the toxins that your body is continually, working to try to eliminate. I have a reverse osmosis system in my home, and I use that primarily. So water is key, and you can get a water municipality report if you're not a homeowner, which you would normally get one every year or every couple of years from your water supply company. And if you're not, if you're a tenant or you're a renter, you can obtain one from the same municipality to find out what is actually in the water. I would strongly suggest that you avoid fluoride at all costs. In my book, there was a woman who did some research on fluoride. She was actually a young woman and fought acne for years. And she joined the service, and the service had her taking some trips internationally to various foreign countries. And she noticed in these foreign countries, when she had extended stays there, that her acne became less or completely disappeared. And then upon her return home, back to the United States, all of a sudden the acne kicked up again. Well, she discovered that if she eliminated all sources of fluoride from her diet, including some things that could be like meat, when meat is processed and it's used, the water supply that's used to clean it is used, it contains fluoride. So she even had to go, for her sensitivity level, she even had to eliminate things that she could identify that were washed off or cleansed with fluoridated water. So once she found all that out, she actually was able to eliminate her acne by use of eliminating a chemical toxic byproduct that's put into our water supply to help gain strong bones and teeth. Well, you gain strong teeth by eating green vegetables and fruits and vegetables that have high mineral content.
Right, and talking about that, you bring that up as far as milk. We see these got milk ads, and it's supposed to be all about strong teeth and bones, and yet you mentioned that it actually could weaken bones and accelerate osteoporosis. What did you learn about dairy products?
We are the only animal species on Earth that drinks the milk of another animal. Why is that? The dairy industry has had something to sell.
Right.
And yes, there's calcium in processed milk, but the calcium that's in this milk product from dairy cows is not something that our bodies can readily recognize, and it turns to acid. And we have to keep our bodies a little more alkaline than acid. On the scale, it's usually 7.365, I believe. And when it's not, our body is looking to maintain that alkalinity all the time. It's an ongoing process 24/7. So your body looks to find alkalizing minerals in your body, and your alkalizing minerals are magnesium primarily and calcium. And where does your body get those from? From your teeth and from your bones. So when you've got that excess calcium being carried throughout your body in order to try to maintain a blood alkalinity of 7.365, then you've got excess calcium traveling through your bloodstream that doesn't need to be there. I mean, it needs to be there because your body needs to stay alkaline, but it's also something that your body isn't getting from the food that you're eating on a daily basis. So it wants to stay alkaline. It has to stay alkaline or you can die. And when that happens, you've got this the excess calcium being deposited in various other bones and joints and so forth. And so then you have a buildup of these calcium deposits in your joints, which can lead to arthritis. And when your body is looking to try to maintain this alkalinity, it's deteriorating your bones and your teeth from the calcium that's needed to keep your teeth and your bones healthy. So you have a deterioration of joints. So your knees, your hips, your fingers, all of these things are deteriorating, which can lead to osteopenia, osteoporosis, and arthritis over time. So, we can eat dairy if we want to, but it's not going to be healthy for us in the long run. It's just going to take away from, and I don't drink dairy at all anymore. Ever since I discovered all of these things, I don't have dairy at all. It just is, and I don't have any problems with my bones or my teeth, and I'm 59 and a half years old now. So, it's been working for me. So, dairy is not a solution. Cow dairy is definitely not a solution. And most babies don't need to have any more calcium after they nurse on their mothers. When they're done nursing, we need to put them on, regular foods, regular green vegetables, green juices, and, this is what is going to produce a healthy body, not all of these formulas, which contain MSG, by the way.
Okay. All right, Linda, we got to take our last break. Listeners, today my guest is Linda Christina Beauregard, author of I Gave Myself Cancer, I Can Take It Away, and we'll be back momentarily on the Truth Seekers radio show.
Post-COVID travel is on a surge. Many of you are traveling for fun because you've been locked up for 2 years. Listen, whether you're traveling for fun to Italy, Greece, Spain, France, or somewhere else fun in the world, or USA, now is a great time to book before the crowds hit and save. Plus, with a strong U.S. dollar, you'll get more travel bang for your buck. Right now is a smart time to make your reservations and call low-cost airlines. With one phone call, you can let us do all the work for free. We'll shop hundreds of airlines, hotels, resorts, and give you a way to save huge money on your vacation plans. And if you call right now, we'll give you a free hotel room with a qualified travel purchase. So call right now.
800-338-3814. 800-338-3814. 800-338-3814. That's 800-338-3814.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No, no one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. 800-393-5045. That's 800-393-5045.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Truth Seekers radio show. Today my guest is Linda Christina Beauregard, author of I Gave Myself Cancer, I Can Take It Away. And Linda, can you give us your web address one more time?
Sure. It's curediseasenow.com.
We only have about 7 minutes or so, and there's so much I haven't gotten to. I think one thing that was really key in your book was, as far as getting over cancer, was detox. Can you talk a little bit about detoxing?
Oh, God, it's my favorite subject. Yes, detoxing is critical. Part of the reason why we get sick is we have this buildup of encrusted, undigested, fermenting food in our digestive system. And unless we can get rid of that, we are not going to absorb any nutrients. Even if we get on a raw food diet and juicing diet, the digestive system is where all of the nutrients are absorbed into your body. So when I was at health quarters, I learned about doing coffee and water enemas and liver gallbladder flushes and doing a parasite cleanse. And it was a huge surprise to me when I saw the physical things come out of my body. I had a length of impacted fecal matter that was about a foot long that looked like a strand of elongated pearls. And it was hard and rubbery, I fished it out of the toilet because I couldn't believe this came out of me. And I'm like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And in class that day, when we were learning about various other things, I mean, we did a lot of educational classes when I was out there to learn why we were sick. And this was a strand of impacted fecal matter that had encased itself in between the inner and the outer lining of my colon or my digestive system. And by using the natural herbs and remedies that they were using to administer, to give me, along with the coffee water enemas and the liver gallbladder flushes, my body was beginning to heal. So it released all these parasites, and the parasites were dying. So the parasites were basically hanging on with claws into my digestive, into the inner and the outer walls of my my colon or my the small intestine. And when they were killed off by virtue of the parasite cleanse supplement that I was taking, they let go. They died. Mm-hmm. And this was the release through the coffee and the water enemas. So this continued to happen to me for months as I continued this cleansing and this detoxing. And I had liver gallbladder stones that were like the size of my thumb, that were 1 inch wide by 1 1/4 inches, that were plugging up my liver and my gallbladder, that through these liver gallbladder flushes I was actually able to give my liver room to actually heal and then also regenerate itself so it could do the job it's supposed to do, and that's to purify the blood and to get toxins out and to put those toxins into your digestive system and then to get rid of them, to flush them out, which is another reason why it's so important to drink so much water every day, is to keep flushing those toxins out. So and people say, well, I don't have parasites, or parasites are only available, I don't live in a third world country. This is the United States of America. Well, if you own a dog or a pet of any kind, or you go grocery shopping, you're exposed to parasites. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of little critters that, nest eggs on fresh produce, even if it's organic. So that's why it's also so important to wash everything before you eat it in a solution of either peroxide in water or vinegar in water, or use some kind of a prepared vegetable and fruit wash so that you can scrub what you can with a vegetable brush, or just, if it's leafy greens, you do the best you can to get whatever you can off from those so that you're not ingesting them. So living a toxic lifestyle is a hard thing to do, but it's important to get rid of the parasites and to make things as pure as you can when you're eating them so that you can recover from this. And I've given programs in my presentations where I have pictures of impacted fecal matter that have come out of my body, and people look like in disgust, like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding you. And a friend of mine who weighed about 245 pounds was going through a detox after taking one of my classes without me knowing it, and he called me on the phone one day and said, what is this stuff? He says, what is this? I feel sick. I feel nauseous. I said, these are all positive signs of a detox, because what's happening is your body is releasing these toxins from your cells, and they're going through your digestive system. I said, just keep it up. Well, the next day he called me, and he was ready to go to the emergency room because he had released this long strand of black, rubbery, impacted fecal matter from his colon. And I said, listen, you can go to the doctor if you want to, but I was ecstatic for him. I said, my God, you have done some amazing work here with doing your own cleanse. I said, if you feel you want to, I said, you're certainly free to do that. I said, but this is normal and it's healthy, and as long as you're not bleeding or otherwise having other symptoms, I said, you're on a road to real health and recovery. So he continued with the program, lost 45 pounds, began to feel better than he ever did before, started eating raw food, as much raw food as he could. And this guy was from Wisconsin, where dairy was king, right? And,
right.
and bratwurst and sausage was like, at the top of his diet list. But he made a transition, and it was an amazing transition. So this is the kind of stuff that doing a detox can do for you over time.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take that long. Once your body starts to heal and you give it the tools it needs, like fresh raw fruits and vegetables and vitamins and minerals, supplements that can really be used, things that your body recognizes and can put to work, it heals. It heals from everything, not just one thing. It heals from everything. Mm-hmm. So you might have cancer diagnosis, but if you're borderline diabetic or if you've got other issues with your health, everything is going to heal. It can't just not heal from one thing. It will heal from everything.
Linda, listen, thanks so much. We're about out of time. And what was your web address again?
CureDiseaseNow.com.
Thanks so much. Listeners, today my guest was Linda Christina Beauregard. Get her book. It's called I Gave Myself Cancer. I Can Take It Away. And until next week, God bless.
Classic conservative patriot talk radio shows of yesteryear like Chuck Carter's For the People, Bill Cooper's Hour of the Time, Joyce Riley's Power Hour, Stan Monteith's Radio Liberty, Tom Donahue's Free Thinker Radio, and many other classic shows. Listen 24/7 at PatriotRadioClassics.com. That's PatriotRadioClassics.com. Kingdom Star Radio Network. Listen 24/7 to Christian biblical teaching and talk radio online at KingdomStarRadio.com. Or download the simple radio app from the Kingdom Star Radio website to listen on your Apple or Android phone or device. Visit KingdomStarRadio.com and listen to the best in Christian teaching and talk today. That's KingdomStarRadio.com.
Fighting a spiritual war on an earthly plane. Broadcasting truth. You're listening to the K-Star Talk Radio Network at KStarTalkRadio.com.
For over 245 years, the American people have enjoyed a certain amount of civility and prosperity in a free society. How did such a strong and leading country go from a prosperous nation with a moral people to such a declining and morally bankrupt nation that promotes depravity and death? Hi, I'm Angeline Marie, host of the Truth Seekers radio show. I've been hosting this show for over 10 years. Now the Lord has put it on my heart to write a book about all I've learned on how we became a soulless society. I'm getting ready to send my book to the editor, but before it's even published, I like to share a couple of the chapters with you, my listeners, for free. All you have to do is visit my website. Go to TruthSeekersRadioshow.com. That's TruthSeekersRadioshow.com, and download the first 2 chapters of my soon-to-be published book about how we became a soulless society and now what we can do to be the light in a time of darkness.
You're listening to Patriot Radio Classics. Yesterday's talk radio shows relevant today. You're listening to Patriot Radio Classics at PatriotRadioClassics.com. PatriotRadioClassics.com. Yesterday's talk radio, still relevant today. You're listening to Patriot Radio Classics at PatriotRadioClassics.com. This just in, Patriot Radio Classics is broadcasting yesterday's conservative talk radio shows, relevant today, 24/7 at patriotradioclassics.com. That's patriotradioclassics.com. We're unlocking the vault. Now you can listen to classic conservative Patriot talk radio shows of yesteryear like Chuck Carter's For the People, Bill Cooper's Hour of the Time, Joyce Riley's Power Hour, Stan Monteith's Radio Liberty, Tom Donahue's Freethinker Radio, and many other classic shows. Listen 24/7 at patriotradioclassics.com. That's patriotradioclassics.com.
You're listening to the K-Star Talk Radio Network, broadcasting truth around the world.
San Bernardino Inland Empire, and listeners around the world. Welcome to the Truth Seekers radio show. I'm your host, Angeline Marie. Thanks for taking the time to join us. We're broadcasting from our flagship station, KCAA 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind. If you're located in the Southern California Inland Empire, you'll find us on KCAA 1050 on the AM dial. If not, you can find us streaming on kcaaradio.com or talkstreamlive.com. You can also hear our program rebroadcast on Liberty Works Radio Network at libertyworksradionetwork.com or on Red State Talk Radio at redstatetalkradio.com. And you can check their website for broadcast days and times. Also, don't forget, you can always find podcasts on kcaaradio.com to listen at your leisure. And you can learn more about our show at truthseekersradioshow.com. Today my guest is Dave Krieger. He's the author of Clouded Titles, and we're going to discuss the foreclosure crisis. Dave is a former news reporter and investigative journalist who won national and state news awards from Associated Press broadcasters. In 1990, Dave began studying law and specializing in real estate, consumer credit, and collection issues. And his first published work was the Credit Restoration Primer. It was released in 1995 and is now entering its 5th edition. Dave currently serves as a paralegal and legal research analyst for a network of attorneys across America that handle real estate and foreclosure matters. He currently conducts audits of county land records and instructs attorneys on the subject of chain of title assessments and quiet title actions in continuing legal education courses around the country. His latest book, Clouded Titles, covers information about the aspects of foreclosure defense, strategic default, quiet title actions, and county land record functions. And so if you would please welcome my guest, Dave. How are you doing today, Dave?
Well, as good as can be expected.
Great. Listen, you know how I learned about you? A couple weeks ago, I interviewed an investigative journalist named Suzanne Posel. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she had just written an article on mortgage fraud and foreclosures, and she highly recommended your book, Clouded Titles, during our interview. And so, of course, I got right on the internet, looked you up, found out more about you, and contacted you. So that's even how I found you, because I think your message and the workshops that you give is extremely important, especially in today's foreclosure environment that we find ourselves in. So what I'd like to ask you, Dave, is just how did you get involved in the issue of foreclosures, and what led you to write your book, Clouded Titles?
Yeah, that requires a somewhat long-winded answer, but I'm not going to try to bore your listening audience. Angeline, basically, this started out back in 2000 when I bought a piece of property and refinanced it. And I bought it from Washington Mutual, which is now defunct. In the process of all of this, I had absolutely zero idea as many people do today. As a matter of fact, millions upon millions of homeowners have absolutely no idea what MERS is. And so mortgage electronic registration systems, or MERS, we have some out there that think there's an A somewhere in the acronym. They call it MERS, but it's MERS. That's what MERS people call it, so I call it MERS. Unfortunately, for this beta-tested model, which is what I like to refer to as, we've had judges around the country and appellate courts rule that this business model is illegal. It shouldn't be there, should have never been there. Virginia Delegate Bob Marshall, who I was on a phone conference with one afternoon, he's out of Manassas, Virginia, one of the D.C. burbs, and he was talking about, what authority or legal right that MERS had to come into existence. And I started looking at my own paperwork, and